Okay, everyone, we are back. Remember yesterday I said that the plane iron, aka the blade, was really badly bent out of whack. Well, not anymore. Real simple fix. I mentioned that I was going to try to hammer it. So I got a piece of wood here, notched out with the radial arm saw this groove here, and then sitting on my low Roman style workbench, I simply sighted down the length of the blade, identified an area where it was bent, and then put that area directly over the notch there, and then gently knocked it with the ball peen end of my hammer here, and this thing is beautiful now. Sighting down either side of it, looking at it head on, this is good to go. So, this is new. You guys haven't seen this before. This is a lapping plate. This is what I'm going to use for lapping in the sole of the plane here. We're not going to do that yet. Just wanted to show you this and how it works. You've got two different grits here. This is a 180 grit. This is 280 grit. And the way these are basically powdered steel, or not steel, it's silicon carbide, but it's little fine grains of it. And you use a honing compound, oil, and coat the surface in oil, sprinkle this grit on there, whichever one you need. Obviously a 180 for more aggressive removal, 280 for a little bit finer, and you work the plane or whatever it is you're lapping in a figure eight motion, so like this, and that'll eventually remove the high spots. I've used this technique on a smaller plane, worked out really well, so I'm going to use it on this guy and see how it works. But to begin with, we are going to lap in the frog so that it mates with these contact points here and here with these areas. And to do that, we've got some metal grinding compound. This is coarse. Again, this is silicon carbide, and this is in sort of a water-based grease. And so we just put, I don't have much of this left, but I think we have enough. Just put a dab of that on all 4 points of interest. And then we will work our frog all over this surface, forward and backward, until we get it how we want it. So what we're doing here is we're lapping in these two surfaces where we take two metal surfaces with an abrasive put in between them, rubbing them back and forth like this for frankly a somewhat long period of time will cause those two surfaces to abrade into one another so that they end up with perfect mating, perfect contact between them. And the reason why we're doing this again is because we want a very smooth and solid fitment between the frog and the plane body. And you know, back in the day when this thing was manufactured in the mid-20s, they did not have CNC machining and all these, you know, these techniques that we're blessed with today. And so they would have had to do this sort of technique in order to get a perfectly fine fit up in between these two parts. And yeah, it's, although lapping existed back in that day, I really don't think the manufacturer would have thought that that was valuable in terms of return on investment for the amount of time that it takes. So out of the box, the fitment was not that great. It was pretty rough. You know, if you need to adjust the frog forward and backward, which is common in setting up a plane, it was pretty rough to move it back and forth even after I cleaned up the rust and everything. However, after we do this, it's going to be buttery smooth. I'll put some wax on there just to have somewhat of a lubricant, but the surfaces will mate perfectly, and there will be no point at any adjustment of the frog where I have less than perfect contact, and so throughout the whole range of motion it'll be a solid bedding, so that this will eliminate any chatter. And that's really what you want, because chatter is it leaves a rough surface on your woodwork, and you have to sand that out or use some other method. So we're going to eliminate that here. So this will turn out to be a great finished product. I'm going to go ahead and cut out 30 or 40 minutes of lapping, and we'll pick up where I am lapping in the face of the frog, where the chip breaker and plane iron made up for the exact same reason. We want a perfectly smooth made up there. That will give us a smooth adjustment of the depth, and yeah, it'll also eliminate any vibration to come from there. So go ahead and pause it here and pick up on the next step. So this skew adjustment lever, we cannot take that out. It's pressed in there, and so I would have to drill it out, I'm pretty sure. I don't think that punches out. It looks like it's peened over, so I'm not going to try and potentially damage it. But we're just going to work the area south of that, and that should be more than adequate to give us a good solid foundation for the plane iron and chip breaker. So we'll just basically be riding along like this. And so basically here is your before to see what the finish looks like. And now we are going to put some grinding compound on here. And we'll start with coarse. Just like if you're seasoning a steak, you want to season it from high up so you get a fairly uniform distribution. Get my pointer, I'll use this. So, I don't have a monitor on my camera, so it's hard for me to tell what you guys can and cannot see. But looking at this, from looking in this area right here, we're not making contact here. Up here in the front, we're making pretty good contact. Nice solid scratch pattern there. On this side, on my left, basically draw a 45-degree angle here, and everything inside that is good to go. But all this area, we're really not making contact. Tiny bit right there. But this is all very low, so that's a problem. Moving up further, we're actually pretty decent on this side. Here on the left side, in the middle of the plane, or frog rather, there's only a few low spots here. It's a little bit faint here on the side, so that's a tiny bit low, but very little. However, on the right side, really bad news. We're really only making contact in this area, and the rest of it is untouched. And then in the center, this is a major low spot right there. So yeah, we got some work cut out for us on this one. I'm going to do the same thing and run my stopwatch. Work it for 3 minutes and see what it looks like after that. Hey everyone, sorry my camera died. I only have one battery and it's 8 years old, so it doesn't last, but I'm going to get more. So we can see the scratch pattern very nicely here in my cell phone camera. Everywhere where it's matte gray, like here, over here, up along here, and in this area here, and like almost this entire area. That's where we're grinding and we're making contact. Dark spots, you can clearly see this is where we are not grinding yet, so there's a pretty significant area here where we're not making contact. Significant low spot right there where we're not making contact. There's a pit right there, no contact, tiny bit right there. And then further up, let's see if we can maybe get that. Yeah, so you can see in the light areas where it's shiny and not ground. That's where we're still low, but pretty big difference just in the 3 minutes I've been working it. So I can feel that the grit on the lapping plate is wearing out, so I'm going to refresh that and run it for a few more minutes and we'll get back to you. Alright, so this is after 3 more minutes. Again, seeing really nice progress. Just a low spot here. This area where it's low is shrinking, and we're now making contact up here where we were not before. And then moving up to the middle, this area is definitely getting smaller. That low spot that we saw before. This side, again, I'm really happy with how it is right now, but obviously we're still going to be making progress on it. There's really only a low spot right there and a tiny one right there. And then over here, the only low spot remaining is about right here, a little bit here. And we're making contact up here, it's just a little bit faint. So there's some low spots along the side there. But all in all, 3 minutes, I'm making pretty significant progress. So we'll continue along. Alright, moving along. So this time I did a 4-minute stretch and taking a look at it, made really nice progress once again. So seeing this is our low spot here, and then we almost have a complete connection between the left and right side of our footprint here, with the only low spot remaining being this bit here and that there. Moving up, still that's pretty deep, so that still hasn't been worn down yet. And then a little bit here and up at the top, you can see how we're progressing. Gonna keep chugging away at it. Alright, so check this out. Really just have a couple spots here and there. This guy over here, and up here. Huge progress that after about 7 minutes. So again, like I said earlier, about 15 minutes would probably do it. So we'll see how it looks after another 8 minutes. Alright, so this is 8 more minutes into it. We're still not quite there. Looking at the low spots, you just got here, these two kind of areas, and then a few spots up here in the top corner. For the sake of functionality, I guarantee you it's totally functional at this point, and it probably won't make any more actual difference in performance for me to just stop here, but I'm gonna keep going just because I might as well, right? Alright, here's another 5 minutes into it. As you can see at this point, I might as well just go all the way, right? Because there's just that little spot there, tiny one there, and there. And this used to be significantly larger. That came down quite a bit. And then just a few spots. it's entirely good here on the right side, and down here on the bottom it's almost entirely good on the left side. So this is a fun project. It's relaxing. I'm just watching TV while I'm working away at this thing. And I wanted to kind of explain this a little bit, the reason why I'm using this instead of using a large granite block and sandpaper. This is way more renewable and effectively, in the long run, cheaper than sandpaper, because I would have gone through countless sheets already by now. But with this, all I have to do is generally every 6 or 7 minutes, I just put a little bit of oil on there and then effectively season it with more grit, and it is renewed. And that's effectively the same as throwing another sheet of sandpaper on there, but that grit is very cheap. The surface plate, I think that was about $90, and I bought that, geez, I don't know, probably 8 years ago or so. Maybe not that long ago, but probably 5 or 6 years ago. But it's done me a lot of good. It's a lot cheaper than going with sandpaper and having to go through sheet after sheet and throwing them away. I like this option better. Alrighty, this is another 8 minutes. Big difference from last time. Looking down here, this area is pretty much perfect. This area up here is perfect. Got a little bit of a low spot there. Tiny spot here and here. And up in the corner. So it is coming along significantly. I took a break from lapping in this, and I refined the bottom here a bit by lapping it with a finer grit. So I started out with this coarse metal grinding compound, and I went down to using the same technique of oil and this grit here. I used 280 grit. And I just flaked a little bit of that in between the surfaces. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. After sprinkling it on there, I then would take it off periodically, check my progress, wipe the frog clean, drip some more oil on there, and then go at it again for a few more minutes. And what that effectively did is it sort of diluted the grit on there slowly. And so I left with a nice shiny surface. I mean, obviously it's not like polished like chrome or anything like that, but you can see there was definitely some reflection. So there's a very smooth made up between those two, and it's rock solid. There is no wobbling at all. It is a very nice fit. So really happy with how that turned out. So I'm going to get back to lapping in the surface here. And I'll just keep doing these videos every, 5 to 8 minutes ballpark, and just continue along until this thing is perfect. And that way, it'll do me a favor too of seeing how long it takes to get this thing completely lapped in. So stay tuned. We're still going. Alright everybody, I'm calling the frog done. So you notice there are still these deep scratches here. Looking at it in the light, I can see that they're actually quite deep, probably 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch, and so that would obviously require removing 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch of material from the entire thing in order to bring it all down. I simply don't think it's worth it. I think I've got a good 99.9% of the surface here covered. I spent 14 minutes in that last session, and in the last about 6 minutes of it, I changed over from the coarse 180 grit lapping compound to the finer 280 grit. And similarly to the frog here, I continuously wipe this off, reapply oil, wipe this off again, and reapply oil to effectively dilute the grit and leave a finer finish. And then the final step, I just rubbed my thumb on some of the grit and oil there and just hand lapped it just to soften the texture of it, and it made a significant difference. This is really, really smooth now. It was kind of coarse or sort of sandy feeling right off of the lapping block, but after rubbing it with my thumb and a little bit of that grit, it is beautifully, beautifully smooth right now. So I'm super happy with how this turned out. It would have been nice if that wasn't so deep and it all came out perfectly, but I have absolutely no question that the performance of this thing will be awesome. In taking off all that material, the edges of the frog here are actually quite sharp, so I'm going to need to knock those down with some sandpaper or my Dremel, because those being sharp and this being cast iron, there's a high probability of chipping, and we don't need that. So we'll soften those edges up to protect them from breaking in the event that, you know, God forbid I drop the thing or something like that, or hit a nail that I don't see. So I think at this point in time, we are ready to assemble the whole plane again, put the whole thing back together, and take a look at how flat or not flat the sole of this plane is. So we're going to do that by painting my granite surface plate, which I don't have here yet. It's in another room. We're going to paint that with a machinist blue dye, which is kind of like a royal blue grease. Smear on a very thin layer of that, and then we'll simply touch this to that surface, rub it around a tiny bit, and wherever you see blue is contact point, and where you don't see blue is a low spot. And from there we will see what kind of progress we can make. I'm going to call this the end of this current chapter of restoring this thing, and so the sole will be the next chapter. The very final chapter will be the woodwork, cleaning that up, sanding it, refinishing it. Alrighty, thank you very much for watching. It's probably been a long episode. I don't know how long exactly, but yeah, we got some progress and we got some work ahead of us. Take care.